this thing on? I don't even remember how this works. I don't even have a layout. My monitor's too high. It's too big. I can't. You got to see me from up there. I can't lower it any lower. My camera's all. It's almost like I haven't done this in a long time. Because I haven't done this in a long time. Before anybody gets, well, okay. For one, let me not presume anybody gives a crap that I'm even making a video. But I was going to say, before anybody gets too excited, I don't know that this will be a regular thing. But my friend Francesco Neo Amati, who many of you are probably familiar with, and if you're not, look up the competitive Blue-White X control/midrange Facebook group. Anyway, he's been sort of my go-to guy to just share ideas with and talk, and we sort of have an informal competition of who can send somebody else the most 1 minute Facebook voice messages. I think I'm the winner lately. He's been a bit busy. Anyway, so I would like to make some gameplay videos. I don't know that I'll have time. I might just keep it really simple like this. No fancy interface, just me, make some videos. Put some new clickbaity title on YouTube, which kind of seems to be the thing people are doing. The thing the kids are doing these days. But I think I'm just going to talk about some stuff because I've had a lot on my mind, and normally when I'm like feeling really magical, I kind of want to like share it. I just like to get my ideas out there, I guess. So, okay, let's talk Stoneblade, because that has been what I'm playing. I've really enjoyed it a lot, and I don't know how good it is. I don't really care. When I first came back to Magic a while back, I swore to myself, you're only going to play the best deck. You were only going to play the best deck. And what did I get? I don't remember. I was going to play some Urza deck. And the Urza artifact deck. And then at the time, Jerry Thompson had written an article, and he was like, this is why it's great to play Blue-White Stoneblade right now. And I was like, that's it. If he's saying it's great, I'm that. Because what I really wanted to play was, like a Blue-White X mid-range, aggro control, sort of the decks that I like to play. And so I was playing Blue-White Stoneblade for a while, Queller Blade as I like to call it, and it was great. And then, things have shifted around, and right now, I just sort of feel like the deck that I enjoy playing the most, and I really like it the most, so that's probably what I'm going to stick with. I even tried to play. I tried to play Bant Stoneblade. I got my first few mana creatures killed, and that put me off the deck because I'm just not. I've sort of mentally pigeonholed myself into this is the type of deck I like to play, and I just force it. So that's what I'm going to do. That's just what I do. I'm not going to, why try to go against the grain? I am who I am. I feel like my camera isn't wide enough. Hold on. Let's see. Oh crap, how do I pause this? I forgot. Stop. Pause. Okay. It's a little wider. Maybe I should just go full wide. Because I guess I realized, like, as I was gesticulating and moving my arms around, that wasn't on the screen, and that's really what you're here for, right? Like, to watch me flail about. So why would I want to cut that off? It's still not full wide, but we'll see how that works out. Anyway, I'm gonna waffle on a lot because I'm not a practice, and I didn't prepare. I literally was just playing a league. I just sent some messages to Francesco Neo Amati just not long ago, and I was like, you know what? I'm hounding this poor guy to death. Let me talk to some other folks. All right, Stoneblade. So first off, I 5-0'd not long ago with a Jeskai Queller Blade list. Not this one, something similar. And I actually... Okay, this is just stuff in flux. Well, let me just talk about the decks in general. I feel like you mainly probably have... You got like 5 different versions that I would consider. You have Jeskai, let's call it Jeskai Queller Blade. And Jeskai Queller Blade is probably, I don't want to say the most fragile, but it is the least good probably at going long. It is well. Just say it's the best against unfair. Certainly the best against unfair decks because of your spell quellers, like combo decks and stuff like that. Oops, all spells. It's great because you got mana leaks, you got spell quellers, and this isn't even right at the moment. This is actually supposed to be something like. I just wish I could run more card selection. I have not been running Cryptic Command, and I'll explain why in a moment. I have a lot to get to, if I remember to get to it all. Oh, is that it? It's something like this. And yeah. The thing is, it's kind of not great against Bolt, and there's a lot of Bolts right now. Now, I still 5-0'd with it, and I still think it's okay, but the sad thing is sometimes, and this isn't right either. I'm not sure what the right number is on these things. See, like I told you, wasn't prepared. But for those of you who actually just really sort of enjoyed my channel, I don't think you'll care that I'm not fully prepared. And we'll be like 20 minutes in before the video gets started. All right, so Jeskai Queller Bade. So this is, I think, if there's the reason. So I was playing Blue-White Stoneblade. Let's just start there. Let's go back. So I was playing something like this. I was playing like the Sharkblade list, and the deck is great. It's cool. I feel like it struggles a little bit against really aggressive matchups. So your prowess decks, because Shark Typhoon just isn't great against those cards, and it doesn't have a lot of removal spells. And so I was playing this list, and I was sort of getting beaten up by those decks, and then I was getting beaten up even worse by the blue-white or just white Death and Taxes lists. Like, I just didn't really have enough removal to keep up with what they were doing. You know, they were making a lot of my cards sort of bad or expensive. So, but I feel like this version of the deck is probably best against. This one has the most ability to grind. You have your Archmage's Charms. You know, you have Cryptic Commands. It's also the best at. It might be the best against big mana just because you got 4 Spreading Seas made along with 2 Field of Ruins. And it's also good against, I think, control decks. You know, Shark Typhoon, instant speed. It gives you a little bit of an angle there. So yeah, it's probably best at going long, worst against aggressive decks. So then I started switching into something more like this. And again, these aren't final numbers. I don't remember the last time I was screwing around with this list, but I was like, okay, so I have to kill a bunch of creatures. You know, I want some more paths or some more removal spells and put a couple of ousts. I want to get those removal spells back more often, so I get some more Snapcaster Mages, that kind of thing. And then you start sort of trimming down on how many Archmage's Charms you're running. You also probably are not as good against big mana because you only have 3 or 2 Field of Ruin. You don't have the Spreading Seas, so you know you don't have that mana disruption angle against them. But probably better than Jeskai at going long, better, not as good at killing small creatures, better than Sharkblade at killing small creatures. Probably not as good against, you know, like potentially other control decks, stuff like that. The reason I switched to Jeskai initially was because of those reasons, the small creatures. You know, I felt like I was just constantly, you know, I was never killing enough creatures versus the prowess decks versus, you know, I didn't have the ability to burn out ever like the shadow decks. And then, the other big deck was the Heliod combo deck. I was like 4 Path to Exile. I was getting dumped on by Heliod combo. You know, it's like I just didn't have enough removal spells. And then obviously the Taxes deck. So I was like, man, I'm all these tiny creatures. So back to Jeskai. And instantly I felt like I started beating those decks more often. You know, just having like 4 bolts, and depending on the configuration, sometimes it's 4 bolt, 4 helix, 4 Path to Exile, 4 Snapcaster Mage. Kill everything. You know? So so that's how I started there. And actually against like Heliod, Spellqueller is at its best when they don't have much or very little interaction. Or if their interaction is really clunky. So that's when I started playing Queller, or why I started playing Jeskai. But the downside with Queller is just, you know, it's really bad against Lightning Bolt. It's not really great against Fatal Push. It's fine if you have a Teferi Time Raveler in play, but you know, if your Queller a 2-mana spell and they have 1 mana up and they kill it before you can untap and play Teferi, it's not always great. So I really wanted something. One little small note on this deck. I think the version I 5-0'd with had no clicks. It had no other creatures here, and I just kept finding like I think it's really helpful to run something here. Like if the deck could support it, you could potentially say like an Archmage's Charm, but you're not really about that life so much. Like you want to ideally you want to play something that does something and tries to kill them. So that's why I felt like Click is really good on the spot, because it at least interacts with their hand in some way and it tries to kill them. Because the thing is, sometimes you want to hold you want to play your Quellers. Like, you don't just want to play them out there. They don't have the most amazing power. They're not the fastest clock. They don't do anything. They're just a body once you've played them. And you want to hold your Quellers, but you need something else to do with your mana, and Click is really good, because Click is, Click comes in, it hits a lot harder, not a lot harder, but that 1 point actually makes a big difference. But so let's just say it hits quite a bit harder than Queller, and it does something the moment it hits the battlefield. It interacts with their hand, it tucks a card away from yours, so it feels like, especially with the rise of the modern power level, it feels like, just playing a Queller for no extra value isn't very good, whereas playing a Click and doing something is a lot better, basically. The thing is about this deck, though, it's just like I said, it's bad against Bolt, so I just wanted something. I was like, man, I need, I need something that has better sword targets in a way, and that led me to this, which is what I'm testing right now. And I'm not sure if these should, right now. I'm testing Sarah Visions again. It's been a while since I've cast that spell, but I was kind of thinking like, I have more Teferis than I do Serum Visions. I'm more likely to see a Teferi than a Serum Visions. Casting Serum Visions at instant speed is really cool. And if I was only going to run like one, like if I was going to, you said you could only run one cantrip in your deck, just one, like, and literally one version of it. If I had to pick between Serum Visions and Opt, I might pick Serum Visions just because, it just does more for that 1 mana. It doesn't find you what you need right away. Plus, we're not as hold up mana-y as much as a deck with 4 Quellers. Like if I was running 4 Quellers, I would certainly run Opt. Let me make sure I'm not lying to myself. Okay, yeah. They're there. But anyway, so this deck's kind of interesting. I like some of what it's doing, because Geist, the old Geist decks, going all in on Geist, actually you can still win with them. They're not awful. Okay, well, it depends on what your power level feeling is. I guess if you constantly play the best deck, maybe they don't always feel good. But I beat Earl and Omnath with Geist of Saint Traft. They can't really interact with them, and they will, occasionally have a player do something like try to play Teferi, you counter it, and then they're planning that if you untap and try to play your Teferi or their your Teferi, they have a force of negation at the ready, but then you play Geist of Saint Traft which they can't force, and suddenly they have this big problem. But Geist is obviously a lot better with swords. That is one reason I'm playing both swords. That way you can, I've actually, this is another small thing that not everybody might agree with. I have found, I feel like 2 swords in a Batter Skull is kind of where you want to be at, because I have so often found like opening hand, Batter Skull, and a Stoneforge and some other cards. And normally you might be like, oh, we drew it, it's terrible. But against decks that don't have removal for your Stoneforge, it's actually amazing, because if you have a Batter Skull, sometimes you search up like a Sword of Feast and Famine, and it lulls them into a false sense of security in a way, because they're like, oh well, I'll find a way to beat that. Or sometimes against some aggressive decks you do that, and I've had people not even, I think, kill my Stoneforge when maybe they could have, because they're like, oh, I'll just kill when they equip that to something. But then suddenly you put Batter Skull into play, which I just totally didn't expect, and maybe block something that they attacked you with and kill it, and then untap, play your 4th land, and put a sword on Batter Skull and hit them with a 6/6 like pro blue, pro red. Suddenly you're playing this monstrous 6/6 creature. You're like making your own Titan. So and it's interesting in a way when that happens, whatever you do on turn 1, you do. You play Stoneforge Mystic on turn 2. You put the Batter Skull into play on turn 3, and you put a sword on it on turn 4. the fastest, the earliest that Geist of St. Traft was going to attack back in the old decks was on turn 4 for 6. Granted, he's hexproof, of course, but you're also able, in that scenario, you are also able to swing for 6 and be pro colors and have a bunch of extra value and gain life and have vigilance. You're really sometimes able to build your own Titan, and I actually think that that's really, I've won so many, I won't say so many, but I have won a number of games against decks that didn't expect it, like against Primeval Titan decks. They get a bunch of field runes in play, and you've been able to suddenly build yourself a 6/6 pro black, pro green, vigilance, lifelink, discard a card, untap my mana, card that they can't interact with, they can't block, and they can't attack into with their Titans because it kills their Titans and doesn't die. So anyway, that I know that was sort of a long diatribe about that, but I totally think that I love when that happens. The other thing too about Geist, just since I was talking about those old decks, is even when you're just getting a Battle Skull, Stoneforge Mystic attacks for 5 on turn 4 if you attack with the Stoneforge. So it hits for 5 against decks that aren't interacting with it and gains life, and 1 card stays back to block. That's not that far away from what we were doing with the Geist deck. So that really kind of makes me feel like, for that reason, you can play the Geist decks if you want, but my like feeling is just Stoneforge Mystic with Geist is just better than that deck was, because it also just sort of gives you this unanswerable threat on turn 2 that they have to deal with, and if they don't, you can potentially win the game just off that. It provides a much, you get proactively engaged into the game much more early, and against decks like Tron too, turn 2 is just infinitely faster to get your sort of tap out business done. It's so much faster than turn 3 with a Geist of St. Traft. So on this deck though, one of the things I like about it is it's sort of like this, almost has like this modal configuration in, like let's say you're going to play against Oops All Spells. These cards come in, or these cards go out, and your Quellers come in. Now I'd kind of prefer to have 4 Quellers, but again, I'm not sure that I'm going to end up running 4 Quellers in the 75. It could be that you end up finding some configuration with 2 Quellers main, like 2 Quellers main, 2 Geist main, and 2 Quellers on the side. There's just probably a meta where that makes sense. I'm not sure what the optimal configuration is for this, but Click is a good card. Click can help you against Uro decks and stuff, resolve spells that you wanna resolve. It can deal with problematic things. Anyway, so if you're gonna play against unfair decks, Click's Quellers, that's great. If you're gonna play against something like a prime time deck, you can keep the Clicks. You can then obviously, you probably wouldn't. You probably bring in the Aven Mind Sensors, maybe take out the Teferis, bring in the Ashioks. If you're gonna play against I hate how that does that. Yeah, so like if you were going to play against a primetime type deck, Aven Mind Sensors, Clicks. I'm not actually sure. I haven't figured out the boarding plan for that. You'd probably win all these things, and then the Aether Gusts, maybe the Cleansing Wildfires, probably the Cleansing Wildfires. But my point is, you kind of have this interesting little, configuration where your 3-drop sword targets, you're able to sort of pick and choose what you want, basically, and what you need, as well as you're sort of starting off here. Geist is a good sword target. What I didn't say is what I was feeling like was a bit problematic with the Queller deck is just that they're fragile, and I was like, man, I really want a target that I can attach something to, and I know it's not going to die. And Geist does that, as well as just Geist can just win games on its own. So anyway, so one of the other things I wanted to mention, the lands, and why I'm not running Cryptic Commands. So Cryptic Command is an interesting one. I feel like Jace is too good not to run. Teferi's obviously too good not to run. I like Cryptic Command. It's a super high impact spell. I want to run Cryptic Command, but the thing is, we're a 23 land deck, and we only have 2 cantrips. If I put cryptic commands in this deck, I have to be running 24 lands, because now I have 4 4-drops. And it's already like, I'm already like, with 23 lands and 2 ceremonies in a deck with any 4-drops, you're already kind of like, you could probably make a case to run 24 lands. But then, the challenge with Jeskai, where Queller, Azorius just doesn't have this problem as much. Like, even in the one with more removal, you have 6 removal spells. That's it. You got room for your Archmage's Charms. You got room for all the cool stuff. The problem with Jeskai is you have all these removal spells. 4 Path, 4 Bolt, 2 Helix, sometimes 3 Helix, or 4 Helix even. So you just don't have as much space, basically. You have to run these cards. If you're running Bolt, you got to run 4 Snap. If you're going to run 4 Snap and 4 Bolts, and a Geist, you just might as well run some Helixes. You're sort of getting further kind of priced into that angle. But so what I'm trying to say here in my way of starty talking is, if you're going to run 4 4-drops, I think you have to run 24 lands, and now suddenly you need to cut 3 cards. Well, I don't really want to cut the Helixes altogether. You could say, okay, well, I'll go down to just 2 2-mana removal spells. But, Remand is good against a lot of decks right now. I don't know that I want to do that. I don't have a lot of counters in general. Plus, against unfair decks, I kind of want those counters to pair up with the 2 Quellers that I bring in. So the moment you cut 2 Cryptics, okay, well, I still have 1 card to cut. Well, I probably don't need that 24th land anymore. So is that all I have to say? Maybe that's all I have to say for the moment. Maybe that's it. Let me think for a second. So is there anything else I want to say? The deck's felt pretty good for me. Well, this particular version, I'm still fleshing out. It could be that these clicks just need to be Quellers or something, but I don't know. There's not that many decks I want 4 Quellers against. Like, Oops All Spells, yes, I want 4 Quellers. Maybe the Heliod combo deck, I think Queller's pretty good because they don't really run much removal. It's not even terrible against some of the primetime decks, because you can put Dryad. The Dryad, what is it? I don't sleep anymore because I have 2 kids, so I'm always sleep deprived, and my brain is always like struggling to remember things that I know the names of. But the Dryad that makes Valakut work makes all, we'll try Elysian Dryad, I don't know what it is. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I was going to say something. Oh, and on Queller, because I'm sure there's going to somebody, if anybody watches this video, I'm sure somebody would say, come on, man, how could Queller be good with all the bolts in the format? And it's like, yeah, I know that, but sometimes you just want to try things, because there are decks where Queller is really great against. And the other thing was, oddly enough, Queller was bad against that deck in the beginning, but if you killed a bunch of their stuff and drew your Quellers late, it's actually pretty good, because if you're both Hellbent or near Hellbent and you have a Queller in your hand and they're like Seasoned Pyromancer, Queller that. Well, they might not have a removal spell, and then you have more time to get another Queller or Dispel or put a sword on it. So I felt like Queller against those decks, they weren't bad. I would trim them, but they weren't bad they weren't bad late game, because then they just didn't, have a handful of stuff to decide what they wanted to do. But they aren't great against Bolt, as I said, and I think 4 Quellers main is it felt a little problematic. Not that Click's any better, but I also don't think that I want to be like rocking. I don't want to put 4 Geist in here. There is, we're not all in on that plan. And if we're more saying like, okay, sometimes we want Geist early, but sometimes we're kind of setting up to play him a bit later and put a sword on him, you just don't need 4. So, but you also need enough creatures to equip to. I always sort of feel like there's a core in my mind, I think, of 12. You have your 4 Stone Forges, your 4 Snapcaster Mages, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. And I don't really want to go below that for sword targets. Valakut Awakening's been pretty good, by the way. This is a card I've only recently begun playing, but I did have it win me the game against Oops All Spells. One problem with Jeskai decks is, like, you just have too much stuff, you know? Like, okay, let's say we're going to play against Oops. It's like, we don't want these, and we don't want these, and we don't want these. Okay, what do we want? We want these. And we want these. And maybe we want that. Maybe, because, you know, sometimes they run packs, but maybe we don't. But you can't get rid of, like, even in this case, it's like, well, okay, you're not going to keep the path, so you can keep a couple of bolts. But even then, like, Jace isn't really, you don't really want Jace there either, actually. Like, if you could just cut everything you don't want against that matchup, you probably don't even want that. You got to bring in 14 cards. So, okay, so let's say you felt like, okay, these are all reasonable. You still have a lot of cards that you need to replace. So you're going to end up having to say, okay, well, I'll keep the most efficient stuff. I'll keep the bolts. You know, maybe there's a chance I could end the game early. Okay, maybe I'll keep the helixes. Okay, so here's our 8 ins, 8 outs. Cleansing Wildfire is really good in that matchup. But you still could just end up drawing a bunch of bolts or helixes or snaps that you don't want yet, stuff like that. So Valakut Awakening, so when I cast it against Oops, I had a window to cast it. I discarded 5 cards. And it wasn't, I'm sorry, my apologies, it wasn't Oops, it was Charbelcher. But basically, they have a very similar mana base. I was able to just get rid of all those bad cards and get, like, a fresh hand. And I feel like, I don't know what's better, actually, Valakut Awakening or Mystic Sanctuary. I'm not sure the right numbers to run. But in a deck where you just have, like, all these cards that you don't always want, potentially just being able to get rid of them all at instant speed is fantastic. Okay. I'm going to slow down for a moment and figure out if I have anything else to say. And then maybe say bye. I think that's it. If you really want to play Jeskai Geist, I would say, and there's probably not many of you out there, but obviously that's sort of what I built this channel on. I don't know what the right configuration is. I do know that... when I first tested these cards in the deck, I didn't like them. And I'm still not exactly sure, you know, again, what the right configuration is. But I can say Teferi is really good with Geist. He's a great tempo card. You know, I'll just use, I don't know, any one creature on the other side of the battlefield. You play Geist, they play their dude to block. You untap, bounce it with Teferi, draw a card and attack. It's totally nuts. Not only that, there's not much they can do at instant speed to interact with your Geist of Saint Draft. And I mean, I've won games with this. You know, you can still totally do things. Geist can still just, you know, when things line up correctly, you can just steal the game, as he always has been able to do. And against Tron, having 4 Cleansing Wildfires now, it really sort of changes that matchup. I know this isn't a complete deck, but the other thing is the fact that it's just perfect sequencing too. Like, you go turn 1, whatever you do, turn 2, kill a Tron land, turn 3, Geist, turn 4, attack, turn 4, flash, snapback, Wildfire, kill a Tron land. You're probably going to win that game. But the major point is the fact that it does it and disrupts them the turn before you play Geist, so it sets them a turn back, is really great. And as a side note, cute little piece of technology, Tail's End can be used proactively in a Geist deck. And I actually tried Tail's End main deck just to see with 4 Geist, because you can Tail's End the Exile Angel trigger, and then Tail's End basically says 1 and a blue, make a 4/4 angel. So that's kind of cool. And then it's also cool because it's a sort of awkward way to make Tail's End into a burn spell, because then when you attack with Geist again, now it's 2 Angels in the air and a Geist of St. Traft. But like I said, as much as I still will sometimes play this deck, I still enjoy it. I just don't like, if you play this deck for 12 matches or 8 or 4 or 6, whatever, if you play this deck and then you play the Stoneforge deck, you'll figure it out. It'll be obvious, because just doing the Stoneforge thing on turn 2 feels way more powerful than having to wait to turn 3 to do the Geist thing. Like, so much can happen in such a short span of time, and from turn 2 to 3 and 3 to 4 in Modern, that like getting that Stoneforge out there, and especially if they don't kill it, and then having an equipment to put at instant speed while then sort of doing your hold mana up thing after that, like, it feels so much better than having to tap out on turn 3. So, and some of you probably recognize that I'm not running any Force Negations in the Jeskai lists. I don't know that that's correct. Okay, so in the Quellerblade list, I think it's fine. You're basically always holding your mana up on turn 3 anyway. In the Geistblade deck, it's maybe questionable, but the thing is, like, the thing is, you don't have Cryptic Command, you don't have Electrolyze. The only real card advantage you have in the deck, besides Jace, is like Snap, or like card draw, rather, like Snap Serum Visions or Snap Opt if you're running that. Obviously, Snap Bolt is a form of card advantage, but my point is, you start forcing stuff, like, this deck just falls behind because you have no other way to make up cards and you don't have a bunch of selection. I mean, at least in Legacy, they run a bunch of this stuff and they're 2-for-1ing themselves like crazy, but they have cards like Brainstorm, which is like, if their select or Ponder, like, their selection is so good, they almost don't need the raw card advantage because they're just really good at finding the one thing that they're looking for. So I'm not running Force. Plus, I don't know, like, Force, I mean, I like the card, but there's not a lot of decks right now, like, that you just have to have it. One of the big combo decks, Oops All Spells, Force doesn't do anything against. Force doesn't hit Heliod. So I should maybe find room for one, but this is what I'm doing right now. So anyway, well, that's it. I know that was just a lot of talking, 30 minutes, I think, of me yakking about Magic. So if you find that boring, my apologies. Don't watch. But, if you just like talking about Magic, then maybe you'll enjoy that. So what else? What else do I got to say? I don't even know how to end this. Let me think one more time. Did I really say everything I wanted to say? Yeah, that's it. For those of you who have mentioned on Reddit or a few places I've interacted about, will I be making videos again? Thanks for your interest and the kind things you said about, when I was sort of making a lot of content. I actually do want to make some videos. I don't know that I will. I've been trying to focus on my play a lot better. Since I've been playing again, I've noticed just some holes in my gameplay. And I guess what I mean specifically is, there are times when I will recognize the right line and then, like, 5 seconds later forget and do the wrong thing. And I tend to sort of sometimes I don't want to say, it's not laziness. I'm trying to just slow down better. I'm trying to slow down my play and let the muscle memory act when it needs to act, but then also just take the extra time and be like, are you sure you're doing the right thing? Are you sure that's the right line? What are you playing? I'm just trying to improve my play a bit. And the thing is, I don't think that is very conducive to making videos. So part of me feels like if I was going to start making videos again, as much as I like trying to teach and explain, part of me just also wants to try and play the best I can. And I don't know if anybody's that interested in watching me play games like, quiet, but then, or talking less. But then again, when I watch Gabriel Nassif, he doesn't talk a whole lot. I mean, he plays a bit slow. He plays great. People seem to enjoy him. And then I watch somebody like Aspiring Spike, who is a machine, talks the whole time, makes jokes. He's like only halfway invested in the game and still just does all the right stuff and wins everything. So anyway, we'll see. I would like to. Maybe, might be taking some time off. Oh, what is it? Maybe some of you might care a little bit what I've been up to, because I used to talk a bit about my personal life, nothing crazy. So what happened? So I moved to London from Geneva, Switzerland. I was really unhappy about it. I'm still like, London is not my favorite city. I'd rather be back in Switzerland, but it's where I am for now. I sort of quit a 13-year career in information technology and started my own business, a video production company, which seems great. I know nothing about it. It morphed into that. I was going to start a photography business. I promised my wife that I was going to get a job, like start a new career, and I was just going to start this business as like a side hobby, and then it became everything I did. And it's been really rough with COVID, but there's some things on the horizon that are looking good. So I started my own business, and I much more enjoy the work that I do with that over IT. Had a year and a half ago, we had our second son. His name is Sylvain, and it's a French name, named him after a friend of ours. And COVID sucks. I'm ready for that to be over. I'm sure everybody is. I've been missing paper magic, something crazy lately. I don't know that I really want to buy into paper again, given the chance. Now, it is kind of hard for me to play paper because, as you other dads with kids will know, when you want to go to a tournament for, the day, that means your partner has to do everything. And that is, especially, raising kids is tough work. And, nobody wants to be saddled with the kids by themselves. So even if I was to buy in paper, that would be, I don't know how that would go. I've also been dirtling around a little bit with some Commander online. I was playing with a friend of mine. He's not playing as much these days. Well, we only played a couple of games, but if anybody wants to play Commander, like, I'm not trying to get too crazy competitive with it. I have one deck that I have Talran, which I could optimize it a bit more and make it, whatever, better. And I have Nahiri, which again, it's a little bit more for fun. I have the Shield of Caldra, Sword of Caldra, to build that little monster. If you don't know what this is, if you get Shield of Caldra and Sword of Caldra and Helm of Caldra, if you get these cards on the battlefield and you pay 1, it makes a big creature, basically. But if anybody wants to play Commander and you're in my time zone, you just want to dork around, I'm happy to do that. Okay, almost 40 minutes of just blabber. For those of you that are still here at the end, I tip my hat to you. And stay tuned. Maybe I'll make some videos. I don't know. But thanks for listening. I'll catch you guys later.